Welcome to Make More Marbles. My name is Brad Hart, and we're here to interview the game changers, the future makers, the co-collaborators and creators who are here to collaborate with one another towards a better future for all of us. Enjoy the show. We've got a great guest coming up for you right now. Go. Welcome to the Make More Marbles podcast. My name is Brad Hart. I am here today with Eric Barker from the Barking Up the Wrong Tree fame and book, and also the Basa. I don't want to say it wrong, Eric. Is it Basayudo?
Bacadesio is the URL, but the blog's Barking Up the Wrong Tree.
Right on, brother. Well, I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for being on the show. And for the people listening at home who may not be familiar with your work, can you kind of give us just one or two things that you really care about or you're really looking to change in the world, like a world-class problem you're trying to solve, or what's really you're excited about right now?
I mean, basically, my book just came out, and the focus of that is basically on getting rid of these myths of success that we all grow up with, these maxims we all hear, and actually trying to look at the science, look at the research, talk to the experts, and get the real maxims of success, not the myths we grew up with.
Right on. So kind of like Freakonomics or Tim Ferriss, meets like a very scientific reasoned approach. Is your background, I know you're UCLA alum, right? Or are you on staff there?
Alum. Yeah. I got a grad degree at UCLA.
Right on. Yeah. So you have a very scientific reasoned approach to things. And have you found in your life that is the number one thing that's kind of driven you to seek more, is this kind of desire to really get to the heart or the truth of things that are repeatable and factual? Because I have a biology degree, but I went through finance and real estate and now help entrepreneurs grow their businesses. So I'm always fascinated to hear about people who approach problems with research and the scientific method, and not just a kind of an intuition or a gut, which so many people are wont to do. It's an easy thing to do, just kind of go with your gut. But when the data contradicts that, that's where the real magic starts to happen, is you start to realize that maybe your gut was wrong all along.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is, 25 years ago, before the explosion of the internet, information was hard to come by, but I mean, the sources generally were, a little more legitimate. Now, we got more information than we can read, more information we can handle, but we don't really, anybody can post anything on the internet. So it's like, trying to figure out what the academic research has to say, what the experts have to say, and translating it into something in English that people can actually read, not like jargon. I think it's really important for us to basically turn an eye towards self-improvement, having a better life, make sure it's coming from legitimate sources, so that, we know that what we're doing is the best way.
And Eric, what was a moment when you really kind of just said, okay, this is what I really want to dedicate my life to, this pursuit of being able to break down this academic research into bite-sized pieces that people can understand and utilize in their own lives? Because I think there's always that kind of moment where it's like, nope, this is something I needed to change, or this is not being done right.
I mean, that definitely, the thing for me was, I had made a big shift in my career. I've been a screenwriter in Hollywood for a decade. I've written for Disney and for Fox. And then, I really shifted gears, and, I was asking a lot of questions. I wasn't sure about things. And, I started going down the rabbit hole, looking at this research, started interviewing experts. I started posting all the stuff on the blog, and that eventually led me to what would become the book, Barking Up the Wrong Tree, which was, me figuring out, career-wise, it's like you hear all this stuff, nice guys finish last. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Winners never quit, quitters never win. And these things are all really pithy and clever and easy to spread. But, does this stuff really hold up? I mean, I know some nice guys who've done well. Is it really true? And so that's when, with the book, I really turned a laser focus on saying, like, what makes, a successful life? And are these different maxims that we've heard, are these actually really good guidelines to live by? Or is this just stuff that's pithy and clever? Or maybe it was true decades ago, but is it true now? And that was a big, big moment for me, because I was looking for answers myself.
I like that. And really, like, being able to consistently reevaluate things, that is and you made a great point. It could have been true in the past, but the world is changing so fast. I mean, you look at influencers like Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil, Singularity, and what they're trying to do is teach people not to think locally and linearly, but to think exponentially and to really understand that the world is moving in an exponential fashion. And if you're not disrupting yourself or your ideas or the things that you believe are true, right? Change is the only thing that's ever constant. You're going to be left behind very quickly. So what are maybe one of the two top things that really blew you away when you first started along this path that you thought were true, but turned out to not be factually true?
I mean, one thing that was really interesting to me was the whole issue of confidence, because everybody is always talking about, you never hear anybody say like, how can I be less confident? You know, everybody, you'll hear some people say, oh, it's what no, it's who and you can get a good back and forth debate there. You don't see any books on how to reduce confidence. Everybody's pretty damn sure that confidence is essential and you have to have it, and so I started looking at it, and the truth is that the problem lies in semantics. Where there is a problem with too much confidence, but we give it another word. We'll call it hubris. We'll call it narcissism. But we kind of put it in a separate bucket once it gets to be a problem. And then, low confidence we think is terrible and scary and awful. But that's because once, when you aren't super confident, we have another word for that. And it can be humility. It can be somebody who's humble, who's open to other ideas, who doesn't think they know everything. And what's really interesting is that there's a lot of research showing the whole confidence paradigm is problematic, and that we can actually do just as well without the downside of hubris and narcissism by focusing on the Buddhist concept of self-compassion. And research by Kristen Neff at University of Texas at Austin shows that self-compassion as opposed to self-confidence, it has all the benefits of self-confidence without the downsides of turning into a know-it-all who's a jerk.
I like that, Eric. And you put up something really important to understand is that you're creating, instead of a binary, like confidence is good or confidence is bad, you're creating a kind of a spectrum, if you will, between, well, it could be humble, right? Or it could be complete hubris, right? When people get overconfident, that creates just as many problems as not having enough confidence, for example, or not being able to act or being paralyzed by fear. So by creating that spectrum, you help people to understand that life is not a 0 or 1. There's a lot of gray areas in between, and what might be right for this outcome is not necessarily right for that outcome. And that's a really fascinating thing. So tell us a little bit about how, self-compassion plays into your daily life, because that seems to be a very important topic for you. I want to kind of pull on that thread and see how these principles have really shaped you into the man you are today.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about, self-compassion is, as opposed to, the problem with confidence is that it's often either delusional or contingent. And delusional, meaning you're telling yourself you're better than you are, I'm awesome, I'm amazing, I'm this and that, and eventually reality is gonna catch up with you, and that's gonna hurt. That's gonna be bad. The other problem with being so focused on being super confident is that confidence is contingent, where you feel like I need to prove myself, I need to go slay a dragon, and then as long as I do that, I deserve to feel good about myself. And the problem is, one day you're not going to slay that dragon. One day you're not going to achieve that goal. And then you're on this emotional roller coaster where, you constantly have to be on this treadmill of proving yourself in order to feel good about yourself. And self-compassion is more the idea that I'm going to see things realistically, and I'm going to forgive myself when things don't go well. And that allows you to not be delusional, to have a very accurate vision of what's going on, to not be a jerk, to learn because you don't think you know everything. You actually can just forgive yourself when you do screw up, as opposed to thinking you're superhuman. It's a much more, kind, kind of friendly attitude. And you also see research consistently that a lot of the problems we all face, procrastination and issues like that, actually clear up. When you procrastinate and you beat yourself up and you feel bad and you put pressure on yourself, that this actually produces a vicious circle. And what the research shows is that forgiving yourself, realizing that, hey, you're not perfect, you procrastinated, all right, I'm going to stop, I'm going to do it now, is actually a much healthier, much more productive way to handle things.
Yeah, it's being realistic with yourself, right? Nothing changes until something changes, right? And if you've been deluding yourself into believing you got it all together when nobody does, right? It's just not realistic for everybody to have it all together all the time. As soon as you can let that truth come out, then you can start from a place of like, oh, I'm not wasting all this energy and attention on keeping the story up or looking good to myself or others. And now I can just really start where I am. And that's a beautiful thing, because then you can have the compassion for yourself and eventually others, which will really, like the most successful people I've ever found, and maybe you seeing this to be true as well, are they're also the most empathetic. They can really put themselves in somebody else's shoes, and from that space create value for that person and grow businesses and do all kinds of wonderful things. I know we have different backgrounds. Yours is more in writing for film and blogging, and mine was in finance and real estate. But I really didn't cross the line until I could really take myself out of my own head and put myself into the hearts of others.
Yeah, and I think that's really hard to do once you get so focused on kind of like, I'm the greatest, I'm the best, that starts to create this imbalance between who you think you are, who you think other people are, as opposed to, again, seeing things realistically, then you can make realistic plans. If you see the battlefield accurately, you can make realistic plans. If you see other people as peers, not as less than you because you're so awesome, then just like you said, you can be more empathetic. You can be very relatable, as opposed to creating this imbalance, which is frankly because confidence is really, the truth is, the research shows confidence really does impress people, but it doesn't make you very likable, and that's where the breakdown occurs. And again, if the confidence isn't justified, then you're not going to hold on to that power very long, and you're also not very likable.
Yeah, I heard a great quote from actually one of my speaking coaches, Thomas Blackwell. He sells from stage $3.5 million worth of Infusionsoft every year. And one of the things Thomas says is that people will respect you for your success, but they'll love you for your failures, and to never be afraid to really show people that you are vulnerable and open. And Brene Brown, one of the top, or if not the top TED Talk of all time, is all about the power of vulnerability. So I think there's a lot of, depth and ability to dig deeper there. So for you, what do you think the biggest struggle is that you're going through right now? At this stage in your life, at this stage in your career, you've obviously had a lot of success in various industries and with growing your blog, and I want to dig into that in a minute. But what do you think the thing that you're struggling with is the most right now in your daily life, or are you aware of it?
I mean, the big thing for me is, it's funny, the sixth chapter of my book is all about work-life balance. And I remember when I was reading it, uh, I, I, I started to feel like a hypocrite. I'm sitting there and I was so focused on the book and getting it done and trying to use every productivity tip in the book and, just focus. And I realized that, I didn't have much balance, and as the research shows, it's like that monomaniacal focus works in terms of getting things done. However, it doesn't lead to a very balanced life, and it doesn't make you very happy. And that's what I was finding, was that the same drive, ambition, and just crazed focus was producing results in terms of the book and the work, but it wasn't leading to a very well-rounded life. And then transitioning out of that, is tricky when you've focused everything, and then stepping back, you've developed some bad habits. And so it's, for me, just striking that balance where it's addictive to be working that hard, seeing the results, moving the needle. That becomes, it's very dangerous. When you look at some of the research on work-life balance, what you see is one of the problems people have is what's called a collapsing metric, which is basically they start to evaluate everything in their life by one number, one metric. And this is very dangerous because obviously, the very common collapsing metric is money. Make the number go up. And people focus just on that, and their health goes to hell, their relationships go to hell, their happiness goes to hell. But hey, the number's moving up. And for me, it wasn't money, but it was getting everything done. I just found that evaluating myself completely by my productivity was really starting to become a threat to my balance. And now I'm trying to see, where's that good balance for myself, where I can still make progress that I'm proud of, but I can still be a well-rounded human being.
I really love that. And it reminds me of another friend of mine, a guy named Charlie Hone, who wrote a couple of books about the fact that, he almost burned out. He worked for, top entrepreneurs like Ramit Sethi and Tim Ferriss for many years. And he was always taking on more and more and more, to the point where he's like, taking Provigil just to stay up and get it done. And what he learned was that after he went to all the therapists and did all the different, retreats and meditation, all the stuff, the thing that really helped more than anything, which almost was like, he laughed when he figured it out, I was like, I just need to play, man. Like, I need to be a kid. So he wrote a book called Play It Away, and that was his literal cure for anxiety. It was a beautiful thing. And I love Charlie. He just had a baby. So congratulations again, Charlie. But just understanding that we're not automatons. We're not just here to do the one thing. Although that one thing's important, how are we going to transition into this new world with all this extra productivity and capacity and leverage? And that's the world I want to create, is like, how do we transition from this current system to the next one, which isn't, there's no analog for the time that we're entering. We're already part of, honestly. Like, what if you didn't have to work for money? Or what if you didn't just have to spend all your time, energy, attention paying the bills? And I don't know where you lean on that side of the line, but I really feel like the future, the analogs and the systems that we have today will have to evolve to meet that capacity.
I mean, we're entering a new world. I mean, that's, some of the stuff I talk about in terms of work-life balance is that, I mean, that it's funny because people, we talk so much about it now, and, 20, 30, 40 years ago, then nobody was familiar with the term. Nobody talked about it. And, the issue is that in the past, the doors of the office used to close at 5 p.m. And being an entrepreneur was very difficult. There weren't the online options, all these incredible resources, available, especially technologically, for so cheap. So the real work-life balance challenge is the issue of, now it's all on us. We have so many options. We have so many possibilities. You've always got your phone in your pocket. You can always check email. You can be working 24/7. The doors, the office don't close. The documents that you had on your desk are available in the cloud. So if you want to go 24/7, you can. So instead of being told, hey, stop working, you have to tell yourself, and that's really tricky. And so all of a sudden, the onus has shifted on us, and that's where it becomes. So the world, like you're saying, is definitely changing. And I think that's the crux of the problem with work-life balance, is that people are still looking at that old model where, oh, I leave work at 5. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. You can fire up your laptop at 10 p.m. and keep going. Are you going to choose to do that or not? Or is the big promotion the big thing? Or is spending time with your family? Or you didn't used to have to make those decisions in the past. Now it's all on you. So I think you're totally right. We need to update kind of our ideas about, work, how work, when does work stop? When does work start? What time is set aside to be, a person. We need to update all of that, because it's still based on the old model. I mean, if you watch Mad Men, yeah, it looks okay. That working world is very different than today's. And I think we need to update our ideas about it.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's like almost updating the human operating system. It's like, what does it mean to be a human now that all this stuff has changed and you can be on 24/7, and how do you create that balance, really? It's fascinating work, and I'd love to hear more data around that. And if you want to add a couple, links to the show notes, we'd be happy to promote those along with this podcast so that people can check out more of your work, which is all very well researched and well put, which actually transitions well into, I mean, I don't know how long you've been blogging exactly, but you guys have a pretty large following. About 300,000 people get your weekly updates. And I'd love to hear, and I'm sure people listening would love to hear, like, some of the key things you've learned about how to do that, right? Because you obviously didn't have 300,000 conversations individually with people. You use the leverage and the tools that are available today to get your message out to more people. So if you could share any of your key learnings from that, I'm sure people at home would be very grateful.
Yeah, I mean, what I think is really key, producing content that really has value to readers. And now that sounds like really generic and typical, but the truth is, I think, from most entrepreneurs to most websites to most companies, blogging or producing content is another box to check. It's something to do, but it's not really evaluated qualitatively in terms of, hey, this is going to be to a high standard. And if this is not something that people are going to find valuable, we're not going to put it out there, as opposed to, hey, get it done. Make sure it's this long, and make sure it's done by 5 p.m. I don't think you can really, treat any kind of content like that. Having something that really speaks to the reader, that gives them something valuable that they can take away, that's legitimate. And it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, but I just don't. I think most companies, and even entrepreneurs, they're, like I said, the time investment isn't there, the focus on quality isn't there, and most of all, it's seen as veiled. It's veiled marketing. It's like I'm just trying to get my ideas out there, and hey, I'm going to present it in the form of a blog post, as opposed to, if you give something people can really use, if you give something that people go, holy crap, where, a standard I always hold myself to is I post the research on, all kinds of topics, from happiness to productivity to relationships to parenting. And, I always want people to look at something I post, and maybe I post something on parenting and somebody doesn't have kids. I want them to look at that post and say, hey, you know what? This isn't for me, but holy crap, like, somebody spent some time on this. Like, this is legit. This isn't for me, but this is impressive. And, I think the amount of stuff you see out there like that is few and far between. I think it's often very thin content that was much more focused on hitting a deadline than it was on trying to hit a quality bar. And as opposed to making the reader go, wow, this is really valuable. I want to get this on a regular basis. I want to share this with my friends. If you do that, the spreading the word, the marketing angle becomes very easy, as opposed to, like I said, something thin that's just trying to get out there, that's just trying to market. I think put the marketing second at best, and first and foremost, give people something that they want, they can use, that they're really going to find valuable. And I think that's really the key to success is giving people something that is really valuable to them, that they will keep, they will cherish, they will say, I'm going to sign up for this, and they will share, as opposed to thin content that's really just trying to market a site or a product.
I think you really hit it on the head, Eric. And you said something that was really telling, is that, I want people to come and see my content. And even if it's not for them, say, wow, this is awesome. Because guess what? People know people, right? Even that person who's not a parent knows a parent or two that they're going to send that to, if it's that good, right? People are going to take the initiative to share a great resource and remember you as a resource when the next time they're looking for an answer is. So, you might get that guy who wasn't the parent who signed up for your list, and then he gets a, productivity post, or he gets another post that is relevant to him, but you wouldn't have gotten that relationship established if it wasn't for that extra time you took on the parenting post, if, to use that example.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because people want quality, right? In a world of noise, what do you listen to? When YouTube has 100, I think it was like 100 million hours a day or some crazy thing, or 1 million hours a day of content being uploaded, it's just impossible for anybody to really understand what's good, what's not. And really, the algorithms are going to drive the day. So if you want to please the algorithms and play that game, you can. But at the very end of the day, the algorithms are driven by human decision making, right? The humans are making it, and they're using the data to update the algorithm. So really please the humans, meet the needs, wants, and desires of the humans you're looking to serve, fall in love with the humans you're looking to serve, as Alex Sharfin would say. And that is half the battle. Then you can create something that they would truly, it's specific, it's considerate, it's valuable for them.
I think it's really the key there is, again, sounds cliche, but building trust. And how you build trust is by putting the reader first, giving them something that's valuable, something where they're not second guessing, what it is or why you're doing it. I mean, Clay Shirky said that, the problem isn't information overload. The problem is filter failure. It's just, there's so much information out there. Yes. But, there's always been tons of information. Just before, it was hard to get to. There were filters between you and it. And, that's what it inevitably, in one form or another, whether it's algorithms or curators on the internet, there's going to be more filters. People are going to demand them because everything else is overwhelming. I mean, Google is a filter. What ranks first and gets the most clicks? That's a filtration method. So if you are somebody that is, putting people first, giving them stuff they can use, giving them stuff that's legitimate, and you can act as that filter, people trust you, and you can't abuse that trust. The trust is very hard to earn, very easy to lose. And if you create that where people feel like, hey, I can trust this, that's a really powerful bond. And that's something where, like I said, then you don't have to think as much about, marketing and signups and any kind of, angles that might start to get gray area or dubious. If you provide a really valuable service to people, they're going to be thrilled, to be a part of it. They're going to be thrilled to sign up, to join, and their friends are going to be recommending, and their friends are going to be vouching for it because you're trustworthy, you're reliable, and you're not going to want to violate that trust once you build it.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, is the trust that takes 5 years to build, 5 seconds to lose. It's incredible. So tell us a little bit about your organization, Eric. So I see a lot of really successful bloggers out there that, they have a team behind the scenes. I don't know if that's you or not, but I'd love to know kind of how you navigate the waters of, keeping deadlines and doing everything you need to do and still having the time to really enjoy your life. Do you have a team or?
No, it is literally just me. So there's no team, and that's and I mean, I'm getting to a point where I probably need to consider something else. But no, I mean, I write the post myself. I maintain the blog myself. I wrote the book myself. And I guess I'm a control freak. But especially, like I said, creating the content is something that I cannot and will not ever delegate, because to me that's critical. That's what I'm doing. That's what I produce, and also, people know when they write to me, they're writing to me, and that's really important to me. Certainly, it can get overwhelming, and so I do need to be particular, about how I use my time, especially when I was doing the book, and the blog, basically breaking it up, in terms of like 4 days a week for the book, like 2 days a week for the blog, and 1 week to one day a week to try and relax. And it's that issue of trying to make sure you're getting everything done. But for me, it can get very tricky because I try and focus so much on quality. That means that setting hours becomes very difficult, because I'm not simply going to say, well, 5 p.m. it's done. It's just going to be done. No. So that means that, I end up working some pretty crazy hours at times, and it's very hard for me at times to gauge just how long things will take. But it's something that has been tricky, like I said, in terms of doing it. But no, right now I do it all myself.
That's wild. So give people kind of a framework, like help them understand, like is the smallest amount of time you've ever taken on a blog post the longest amount of time you've ever taken on a blog post, and what's kind of like the middle ground that you seek to hit? I mean, I know the time isn't the key driver, it's the quality, but what kind of hours are you putting in?
It can get pretty crazy. Like it depends on what you want to include. So for instance, like everything I'm writing is coming from, other sources, that I'm citing. So I have to read those sources, and the other issue being I have to, read more sources in order to find the good sources. So it's like, so are we going to include how many hours it takes to read a book? And then are we going to include the 3 books I read that didn't have anything valuable in them in order to find the 4th book, which was valuable? And then sometimes, I'll contact the author or the academic, and interview them, and I'll prepare for the interview. I'll record the interview, then I'll get the transcript and edit it. And so, I mean, it can range. I've had some things take, like dozens of hours. And I've had certainly things that where I already had like the sources on hand, and I knew a point, a through line that I wanted to work on. So, that might take, I'm trying to think minimum, might be at this point, minimum might be like 6 hours. But I mean, it takes a lot of time for me to do what I'm doing. I mean, I know when I was promoting the book, it was crazy because, when sites were talking about it and they wanted to use excerpts, I was like, hey, great. When they want to do an interview, I was like, oh, great. When they were like, oh, we want you to write original content, I was like, oh my God, like, this is going to take me. Like, I mean, I was, I did it at times, but I was so reluctant to produce original content because it just takes me to do what I'm going to be happy with and not feel guilty. Is going to take me a lot of time. I mean, currently I do one blog post a week, and that goes out my weekly email. But yeah, it takes a long time.
That's great. I mean, well, but listen, like you have the capacity to do it. Obviously you have the drive to do it. Like the best entrepreneurs I've ever met, and I would include you in the category, somebody who built something from nothing, right? As an idea, or really scratching their own itch. Like you wanted this to exist. It was a desire you had, and that was a cause set in motion, which created it. So, what are some of the itches or, what are some of the things that you'd like to scratch going forward, where now you're at your place where maybe you're starting to consider, you can't outsource the marketing, you can't outsource the checkbook, and you're going to continue to write the content, to use that analogy. That's going to be your baby. But what are some of the things that maybe you could get some leverage on in your life? And by and large, like how could you increase this mission and help more people if that's what you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me will be more of kind of the ancillary tasks because, the content, the weekly email, that's all going to be me. If I, I mean, in terms of that's going to be a tricky area, but it's more kind of the outside, kind of supporting stuff. I mean, frankly, I think a lot of it would be more on the personal side because, those are things that are, non-critical path type activities because, with the book, I was just so kind of head down focused on that. And it was really hard to shift gears to go back and forth between, getting the book out there and then the blog. And sometimes there was some overlap in terms of, marketing the book on the blog, and that, that made things slightly easier. But, I've got to say that maybe this is a flaw in how I do things, but I just find there aren't tremendous efficiencies in terms of quality content. I'm generally kind of skeptical about that because, I think, like I said, my history and my past in filmmaking, and, I think that you can leverage technology to do things better. But in terms of actually doing things well, especially with writing, it's still going to take a lot of time unless you're going to have somebody else write it, which is just not how I handle things. I think, scaling effort in terms of efficiency, I think that's that. I don't know how I could do that. I think that's a very difficult challenge. I think there's other stuff, site design, SEO, back end stuff that can certainly be outsourced. But like I said, I'm totally focused, and my blog is not the most beautiful thing in the world, and I'm very focused on the content, and I don't think that's something that lends itself easily to scale and efficiency.
No, and I love it. And we're only now, after 3 years, for example, Make More Marvel started as just a blog that I threw together, and it's not pretty, but it is what it is. And I was more concerned with getting it out there than worrying about that. So I could totally relate. And only now are we doing like a rebrand and all that great stuff. But you're right. Like, if you can focus on the one thing which lights you up, makes you happy, and you love it, which is creating the content, I would say go for it. Like, it just reminds me of my friend Felicia Spar. She's a great copywriter and coach up in San Francisco, and she's basically outsourced everything in her life that isn't writing words. Right? So she doesn't shop, she doesn't drive, she doesn't cook, she doesn't clean. None of these things are in her purview. Like literally everything that she can outsource, so the low level or mid level task, has been outsourced, and all she does is write words all day and take care of her body, and that's about it. And it works.
No, I think that's where I think I'm headed.
So she could be your example. Absolutely. So Eric, what would you really love for people listening at home to understand or to take away from this as like the, the 1 to 2 to 3 valuable takeaways that we all look to seek to create, right? I always want to create content, which is both spur of the moment, but also very valuable. So what would be the 1 or 2 or 3 things that you would really love for people to take away from your message and your mission?
I mean, you know, I've, geez, it's like I write about so much different stuff, but I think one of the the key takeaway I think from my book, that from looking at the research and talking to the experts, was basically when I spoke to Harvard Business School professor Gautam Mukunda, some of what he was saying, also some work by Boris Groysberg there, in terms of what produces success. And we success is a very general term, and we can define it ourselves. But one critical formula there, which everybody should keep in mind, is that often success is a two-part thing. First and foremost is know thyself, is knowing who you are, knowing what that means is knowing your signature strengths. And there's a lot of research done at University of Pennsylvania by Martin Seligman and others in terms of signature strengths are the things you're uniquely good at. Those are the skills that you really have. And all the research shows that the more time you spend using your signature strengths, the things you're uniquely good at, the happier you are, the more respected you feel. And obviously you're good at it. So the better you perform. So knowing yourself, knowing what your signature strengths are, but also knowing what your intensifiers are. And that's something I talk about in the book, and that's part of Gautam's research, that intensifiers are qualities which are negative at the mean. In other words, they might be bad qualities, but in the right context, they can actually be good. So in other words, you can be stubborn, and stubborn is a negative quality. However, if you're an entrepreneur, stubbornness can very easily be grit. You stick to something, you don't give up. So all of a sudden, whereas stubbornness in your typical hierarchical corporation might make people angry and make you quote unquote difficult, as an entrepreneur, stubbornness is almost essential. So in the right environment, those intensifiers, those qualities which are generally negative but can be a positive. So understanding your signature strengths, understanding your intensifiers, that's knowing yourself. And then the second part of the success formula is picking the right pond. In other words, that is finding an environment that rewards your signature strengths, that rewards your intensifiers. So if you could be the most creative person in the world, and you might get offered a job at the best accounting firm in the world. Now, those are two top, that you're the best in being creative, and they're the best in accounting, but that is not a good combination. So the issue becomes alignment, is looking at your signature strengths, your intensifiers, finding a context, a group, a company, or again, forming your own company, which rewards your signature strengths, rewards your intensifiers. That's a way that you can find success in, almost any arena. If you're thinking about, who you are, what you are, and a place that rewards that. Now, and if you're an entrepreneur, that means structuring your company, structuring it so that it does take advantage of your signature strengths and intensifiers, or that you're surrounding yourself with a management team who compensates for your weaknesses, that you're not trying to do things that you're not good at. They're handling those, you're rounding out your weaknesses, and you're focusing on, your signature strengths and intensifiers. So knowing thyself, picking the right pond, that's a really good takeaway, I think, that people should realize in terms of finding success almost anywhere.
Yeah, you bring up a really fascinating point, and I feel like the narrative, and maybe this is something you could dive into at some point, or maybe you have already. I haven't checked out your entire catalog yet, but I'm looking forward to it. Is when Darwin talked about the origin of species, or the survival of the fittest law, he talks about really adaptability as being one of the key traits. The other trait that he talks about is collaboration being one of the key traits among successful species. especially with regard to humans. Like humans that compete with one another for resources tend not to do as well as tribes that collaborate. And now the narrative seems to be that you need to go off into and do it on your own. And what we're learning is that, you know, solopreneurs and people who really tend to set themselves up for failure are actually struggling because they're not collaborating at the rate that we used to when we were evolving, which gave us the competitive advantage because we all had skills, we all had strengths, and we surrounded ourselves with each other. And you know, we didn't have everybody building roads or building houses or farming. We had people doing specialized things, and creating an economy was a way that we could specialize, but also derive the benefits of others' work and labor and production. So, you know, I'd love to hear your thoughts about how, you know, these two models kind of mesh, right? So you love to run your business on your own and you don't like to outsource based on quality, but also you're saying that the number one trait is to find your strengths and find your pawns, and then surround yourself with people that balance out your strengths or balance out your weaknesses. So I'd love to hear kind of your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, again, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're forming and you're trying to create a company that can scale, then yeah, I mean, you're going to want to be hiring people. You're going to want to collaborate. I mean, competition, you know, makes competition. You know, you saw historically often because resources were scarce, and so it became a zero-sum game. You know, the easiest way for me to get stuff was to take it from you. You know, as opposed to now, you know, we live in a world of abundance, and so you have you know, most things aren't zero sum. There's plenty of ways to make money or feed yourself. You know, so collaboration, you know, working together makes a lot more sense, and again allows for scaling. So I think, you know, for that it just becomes really an issue of, first, like I said, the issue of success, you know, is knowing yourself and then picking the right pawn. And what's interesting is, like I said, the Harvard Business School researcher I referenced earlier, Boris Groysberg, he actually did research specifically on what you're talking about, where a lot of people get this idea in their head that, oh, I was successful and I'm a success and therefore I'll be successful wherever I'm at. And that ignores the pick the right pond issue. And Groysberg did research and found that wasn't the case. There was that very often, I think he looked at top analysts on Wall Street, and he found that when they jumped ship and went to another company, they were no longer top analysts. However, if they jumped ship and they brought their team with them, they stayed top analysts.
Interesting.
Yes, because the issue being that, again, the rounding out of that skill set, you know, is in terms of, rather than you trying to be a solopreneur and doing everything, you saying, here are my signature strengths, here are my intensifiers, this is what I can handle. And for X, Y, and Z, I'm going to have a team. They're going to handle that. They're the best at what they do. And with that, we've got all the ground covered. Well, if you just pick up and move by yourself, you know, you have your signature strengths. Who's covering those other bases? Do you have that shorthand? Do you have that trust? You know, do you have that real connection where you can rely on? You know, no, you're going to have to build that up from the ground, you know, from zero again. And who knows if it's going to work out? And that's why those analysts didn't stay top analysts. When they brought their team with them, again, they had the full package. They had rounded everything out. They had all the bases covered. They could pick up and just start running again at a new company. So I think that's the kind of thing that entrepreneurs want to look at in terms of making sure all of the responsibilities that need to be handled by the company are handled by people where that's their specialty. You know, that even allows, like I said, people to jump ship, go to another firm, hit the ground running, and stay top of their game. You always want to be rounding those things out. And again, to do that well and be able to continue to scale and grow, yeah, you're going to need a team.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Eric, for that. Because that's basically the entire core ethos of what we're looking to do here is just get people the support and the help they need to do the things that they want to do in the world and work together to win more. So thank you for that. And that perfectly kind of segues into the next point, which I'd like to open up the floor, really. I mean, every guest we have on here gives so much and adds so much value to our audience. And we want an opportunity to do the same for you. And we're always looking to, you know, plant seeds and grow crops. And crops is actually an acronym. It stands for connected resources, opportunities, people, and systems together to help you further your mission and goals. So how can we give back to you in that way? How can we add a connection, a resource, an opportunity, a person, or a system to your life that would add value?
I mean, you know, the best thing people can do is check out my book or check out my blog. I mean, I'm putting information out there to try and help people, and I want to make sure that, people are getting a look at it and they're seeing, if it's valuable to them, if it's useful to them or somebody they know. So, I mean, if anybody wants to check out my book, Barking Up the Wrong Tree, or my blog, Barking Up the Wrong Tree, that would be fantastic. And I really appreciate you putting the offer out there.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Eric. And, we want everybody to win together. That's really the point of this whole community and everything. What's the best way to get people in contact with you? If you could spell out the name of your blog just so people can find it easily. And then also the best way to contact you personally.
The best way, because the URL is Japanese and a lot of people wouldn't be familiar with, the best thing is to Google Barking Up the Wrong Tree blog, and it'll be the first result, or Google my name, Eric Barker. The book is Barking Up the Wrong Tree. On Amazon, you can put Barking Up the Wrong Tree or put in my name, Eric Barker, and it'll come right up there. People, the best way to stay engaged with me and what I'm doing is to sign up for my weekly email. And I send it from my email address. So anybody can reply to that and reach me. But there's 300,000 subscribers on there now. People will get the latest content in terms of what I'm doing, the research I'm finding, and hopefully it's something that people find useful.
You're awesome, Eric. Thank you so much on behalf of the whole Make More Marbles community. We really appreciate you being here today, and we look forward to seeing what you come out with next week.
Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. And thanks so much for listening to the Make More Marbles podcast. For more tips, hacks, and strategies to create an amazing, abundant life in your health, wealth, and relationships, whatever that means to you, head on over to makemoremarbles.com. Check out our cool explainer video about what we're about, and join our community of entrepreneurial game changers. We want to help you level up your life in every possible way. And don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and please do leave a review. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next podcast.